going on, yo? Welcome back to Me and Pops Unplugged. This is episode 6. We appreciate you guys tuning back in with us. So, I got a question to pose to y'all, not only just Pops, but all our viewers right now. What are the three defining moments in your life, whether they're positive or negative, that have defined you as a person? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So, jumping right into it, Pops, looking back, I know you got some stories for us and some wisdom. So, what is one of those defining moments for you personally?
First and foremost, I would say, my mom and dad, they got divorced when I was 6 years old. And obviously my dad left the house. So, that would be first and foremost because that just changed everything. You go from a two-parent household, you know, to a one-parent household overnight. And, go a little bit forward. My mom winds up meeting my future stepdad, my future stepdad, her future husband. And we wound up moving to his house. And, I, like I said, take one parent out of the house, and now you move to another house with a whole new, dynamic step parent. And, that was huge. Um, and it makes me wonder, how things would have been if I would have grown up with that every day. And then also, changing areas, even though I still stayed in the same city in Philadelphia. Went from Northeast Philadelphia to Port Richmond, where I grew up. But, I constantly wonder, what things would have been like if, either of those or both of those was different, if my dad was in the house every day. And, if I would have been in a different area, would I have gotten into the same things? Would my life have turned out the same? So, definitely that's the biggest one for me.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's only natural. I feel like everyone on this planet does that. Oh, what if this happened? What if that happened?
Yeah.
The past is the past. Can't get caught up on it, but you are who you are today because it all played
Yeah.
out the way it needed to. So, all right, cool. I mean, for me, first significant canon event, and if you guys aren't familiar with what canon event is, new slang going around with the younger generation, just major events that have taken place within your life. So significant for me would it have to be military school. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know me, I was troublemaker, just hanging out with the wrong kids, no gang banging, no shit like that, but smoking weed, partying, doing the wrong shit. So Mama Duke sent me off to military school. And I thought she was bullshit at first time. I'm like, yeah, okay, you ain't fucking sending it anybody anywhere. Until I remember the first drive on going to campus, and it was crazy too because I literally had a dream years before of the campus and didn't even realize it until we pulled up, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like I've actually been here before, or it just seemed super familiar, and I'm like so thrown off. We get there, I see one of the instructors, like the drill sergeants, and he's like, hey, what's going on, cadet? I'm like, ah, fuck. Like, and that once I was in that environment, I'm like, okay, like this is for real. I remember that whole week, whole first week, stomach just destroyed. Like it was just terrible. Like, I'm nervous, new scenery, new environment. I don't know what's going on. I'm doing push-ups. And yeah, it was definitely life changing. And same thing. I wonder, like, if I didn't go to military school and just stayed in public school, like how would that have turned out?
And it's funny too because I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember you
I was
calling
calling
me.
you.
Yeah,
Like,
you were
dude, you
calling
gotta
me.
get me out of here.
That's what I was just ready to say. You were like, "You gotta get me out of here. I can't take this. I can't deal with this." And I felt so bad for you, but me and your mother were divorced, obviously at the time, and it was like you lived with her, and we were having issues where you. I mean, it wasn't major issues, like you said. It was just like a lot of stupid shit. Smoking weed, doing dumb shit, and she was just like, "I'm not having it." And I agreed, like, with you need to get your shit together. But for me, it was just like at the time, it was just a drastic. a drastic move. And I
Right.
felt for you, I felt for you. And, I remember calling her, like, do we really need to do this? Like, he's struggling, this and that. And, I felt for you, but it was like, she was adamant about
And it's like, damn,
you.
kid, you're in it now.
Yeah. And it was
You
just
might as
like,
well
and
fucking
I
suck it
think,
up.
I don't know if you remember, but I remember telling you, like, hey, there's nothing I could do. Like, she's adamant about this. Like, I can't help you. Like, you gotta tough it out. Like, you gotta deal with it. So yeah, I remember those days, and it's funny because it's like I remember it like it was yesterday. But in the end, like you said, like it worked out. But I remember those days, and you just like being like, please help me, because at the time, what you were, what, a sophomore?
Yeah, I
You
was
were
a
like
sophomore.
15.
And I remember I
Yeah, you
even
were
went
like 15.
early for football. And to
Yeah,
make matters worse, I remember that whole summer we had to shave our heads, look like fucking
yeah,
KKK member. Just straight zero, straight
yeah,
zero,
yeah,
everything. And I'm thinking, I remember that summer because it was hot as shit. It was like high 90s, hitting 100
yeah.
degrees like damn near every day. And we're out there in football practice. Now I'm thinking, oh yeah, we're Italian. Like I'm not gonna get sunburned. My dumb ass, not even thinking, didn't put on no sunscreen, nothing. Got sun poisoning that
Oh
summer.
wow.
What, like right when I got there, like within the first couple weeks, had to go up to the health center. I'm talking, my shit was so deformed. I look like Quasimodo, like hunchback,
Uh,
like fucking
uh,
face deformed, everything. I'm up in the health center for like a week, like just fucking laid
mm,
up. Like there's nothing I can do. So that made matters worse as well. And yeah, man, it was just a crazy transition. But no, I mean,
yeah.
I would do it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it created a lot of discipline for you, and I feel like it kind of, not to bring his issues up, but it kind of kept you away from certain issues that your brother went through and I went through, and stuff like that. So I feel like it was beneficial. It taught you a lot of discipline, and you know, kind of be, on your shit, per se. So I feel like it definitely helped, but again, at that time, you just weren't having it. I felt terrible for you, but it was out of my hands at that point.
It's all good. It worked out in the end. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then so like moving forward, right? My
Mhm.
second one. So I picked this is what we did. We just picked three, major events from both of our lives that we wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. So mine was my first real relationship. And I'm not talking that, it's this chick, we're just messing around. I'm talking like first real relationship. That was a big one for me too, because I was so young. Obviously, I didn't know what the hell I was doing half the time, but it was good. First couple of years, good, but I realized it went sour because I didn't address a lot of the traumas that I thought would never catch up with me. Like I want to describe this the best way I can. So, we all go through shit during our life, right? And at the time, wasn't talking to family, wasn't talking to really anyone. My friends were away, at least from military school. I didn't see them like that. So for the most part, I was alone, and I'm dealing with career. I'm dealing with rent. I'm dealing with car payment. I'm dealing with a relationship. It was just a lot. And basically, I crashed out. I crashed out because I didn't know how to deal with it. And then all these emotions and things I didn't know how to deal with caught up with me. I'm talking drinking all the time, not being on my purpose, not excelling at work like I was. I mean, my role at the time, I was getting awards at work for the first couple of years. I was being recognized, like killing the game. And then as the years went on, that lack of purpose caught up with me. And essentially, I wasn't being the man I know I could be. And looking back on it, I I'm not even surprised it didn't work out because I wasn't on my P's and Q's.
Mhm.
So that first relationship for everybody, I feel like is defining because it kind of sets the precedent on what every other relationship is going to look like for you. But um, same thing. Like I don't regret it. Like the good, the bad. It told me a lot, not only about myself, but what I want moving forward. And I know when that next person rolls around, me and her are going to be good. So it's just an interesting perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like a lot of times those first relationships and when you're really becoming a man and stuff. And for me, mine was with your mother, obviously. Me and the mother grew up together in the same neighborhood. I knew your mother for years, never thought I would be with her. And, things just happened the way they happened. And,
Right.
but I mean, looking back, I got you and your brother out of it. So, it was a blessing and everything. But I mean, realistically, we never should have been together. We were both, she had issues, I had issues. You don't realize until you're older, you're a kid, you think you got it all together and know everything. But, we should have never been together from in the first place. Um, we kind of, I feel like honestly, at that time, especially when you're young, a lot of relationships are based on physical attraction and stuff like that.
Of
It's
course.
not based on common goals because you're not really looking for, towards the future. You're just looking at, this person looks good, this, that, hang out with them a couple
Yeah,
times.
it's surface level shit.
Yeah, it's all surface level. And, you're not really looking at the long term goals and our views didn't align and you could kind of your mother now we don't talk but just on politics me and her as far as we could be apart so but when you realize it you're talking years later but those views were probably the same views back then a lot of them I know that we change as life goes on but when you look back on it we just weren't compatible. Like I said, it was a surface level, physical type of thing. But again, I don't, we all, God has a plan for us and we all go through, our own journey. And I wound up
Of
getting you
course.
and your brother out of it. So it all worked out. But yeah, I mean, we learn, like you said from that first main relationship, you learn a lot of things about yourself, about what you want and what you'll accept and things of that nature. But you also learn a lot about yourself and what you could have done better and areas that you failed in. So everything, people come into your life for a reason or for a season, and it's either a lesson or a blessing. So, you learn lessons from that, lessons about what you want and lessons about yourself, to carry forward in your next relationship. So again, it's like we said this in a previous episode. A lot of people will complain about, oh, my ex and F her and F them and you just all this anger. And it's like, honestly, I feel like you should be saying like, hey, thank you. Even though it didn't work out, you taught me what I'll accept and stand for, what I expect in life, and also things about myself, like of where I fell short, and what I need to work on going forward. So a lot of times, most times anyway, people are constantly just with the negativity about their exes, and granted, a lot of people go through crazy things with ex relationships or whatever, but you got to really even that. Even if it's crazy off the wall type of stuff, it still teaches you something. So, thank you for teaching me that lesson, whether it be about you or about myself. You know,
No, I agree. I mean, let's be honest too. Most relationships end terribly, like
yeah,
not cordial. People don't get
yeah,
closure. People are fucking spiteful. Got a
mhm,
lot of hate in their heart. But I mean, that just goes to show the growth and maturity right then and there. Because you're like, you know
yeah,
what? I could be sitting here angry, but I'm gonna be at peace with myself ultimately,
yeah.
and just forgive the whole
Mhm.
situation. No, I love that. And I
All right.
mean,
Well, I guess I should jump. Oh, go ahead. Go
well, I was just gonna say, like, fuck, I forget what I'm gonna say. We're gonna edit this part.
ahead. All
God,
right. All right. Well, with that being said, let me jump into my second one. And this. I kind of went over this to you before, and anybody who knows me, well, they may or may not know, but I've shared this before. Is my point. When I was about 10 years old, again, I grew up with my mom. My dad wasn't around, so my mom had this friend, and she lived in the same area, a few minutes away or whatever. But her friend had a son that was a few years younger than me, like maybe a year or two younger than me, and the daughter was like 3 or 4 years older than him. So we would go over there a lot. And I remember one night I stayed over, and I'm about 10 years old, so her son's probably the woman's son's probably like 8 or 9, a little bit younger than me, and the daughter's maybe like 14. So I stay over one night, and like a lot of young boys, I don't know for, and people have told me the same thing. Like a lot of times you sleep over when you're a little, young boy, maybe a young girl, I don't know, but you sleep over somebody's house when you're a little kid, and you might sleep in the same bed with them, you know, next to each other, or whatever. Um, Not on no weird shit, but just because that's their
Yeah, I
bed.
mean, you guys are
You know what I'm saying?
kids. No, I get it.
So anyway, um, I sleep over and I wake up and I wake up to, I don't know how I didn't feel it going forward, like my pants coming off, but I wake up to his older sister on top of me. I'm naked, well, from the bottom down anyway, and she's on top of me. And let's just say she's doing things to me without, going into detail, and doing things to me, doing things to herself. You know, you could use your imagination. And I look over because me and her brother sleeping in the same bed. And as I look over, her friend, his sister's friend's on top of him doing the same thing. So I look and he looks at me and we like lock eyes and, you know, I'm laughing about it, but it really wasn't funny. Like nobody said anything. Me and him just looked at each other and I think we were just both in shock. And again, like I'm like 10, he's probably 8 or 9. And these teenage girls are on top of us, basically molesting us. And, at the time, I just didn't know how to process it. Uh, Initially, I thought it was like a badge of honor, where, the next week I'm telling my friends, like, yeah, I had sex before and all. And they're like, you're a liar, and all that stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, she was doing this. Da, da. And even though there was no penetration, you know, obviously people could probably figure it out. But as I said, it was like a kind of a badge of honor at first, but I didn't realize how much psychologically it really messed with me and really kind of fucked me up, part of my friends. But I didn't know how to process it. I was 10 years old and I didn't know how to process this. And I just constantly kept thinking about it and I didn't understand it. And, I'm 10 years old. I don't even really know what the word violated means, but that's what it was. Like I was violated and taken advantage of. And, you're so young that you don't know how to process things like that. And I say that that's, such a significant thing in my life because knowing now what, I didn't know then is it kind of dictated a lot of the relationships I had with females going forward because I didn't know how to process it.
No.
It I internalized it and it became like an anger where I was like angry at women. So going forward, once I got into my teenage years and started getting, female attention and stuff like that, I feel like it kind of dictated that. And it kind of was the reason for why I was the way I was. And anybody who knows me in my younger days, I had hair then, no gray, I was athletic, I was in good shape. I got a lot of female attention and, I used that to my advantage. And I feel like I was almost angry at women because of that situation and then stuff, internally in my household, relationship with my mom, different dynamics where, I was angry at women. And now I'm getting this attention and girls are kind of throwing themselves at me. Where now it was just like, it wasn't about feelings. It was about like, I'm gonna get what I want now.
Yeah. It
Like
was like a it
I
was
was
like a revenge
violated.
tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It
It
was
was
like, all right,
I
I'm gonna
was
pop this chick. I'm gonna
violated.
pop that
I
chick.
was violated, and y'all hurt me internally. So now I want to hurt y'all. And it was just like I was just out, once I got into my teenage years, like, all right, I want the hottest woman, that looks good that everybody wants. I want to have sex with her, and I'm gonna move on. Like it was
Mm.
nothing about feelings. There was no getting close. Um, I didn't have like a regular girlfriend as a teenager. Like I just ran through them, and I'm not proud of that. And I realized today that that situation and other situations kind of dictated that, and I just didn't know how to process it, and that was my way of releasing it or dealing with it.
Right.
So that was a very, very significant thing in my life. And, something a lot of people want to talk about, especially like now you hear about people being molested or raped by same sex. But, mine was the opposite. And a lot of macho type guys was like, well, what are you complaining about? Like, it was a girl. Well, it doesn't matter. I was 10 years old and,
Yeah, you're
I
still
wasn't ready.
violated. Like
I wasn't,
that's your body.
yeah, I wasn't ready for that. And I didn't know how to deal with, the feelings and, you know, the whole mental part of that. And it really dictated a lot of the relationship stuff going forward. And then in turn, like I said, I got you and your brother out of me and your mother meeting, but I feel like maybe if that never happened, like I wouldn't have even been with your mother. So, I don't know. And again, like I'm not I'm grateful that I have you and your brother. So like I'm glad that it happened if that's the reason. But like I feel like a lot of the relationships I wound up later on in life would have never happened if things like that didn't happen because it kind of just made me choose the wrong partners and be looking in the wrong areas. Like it's a very deep impact that it had on me. And so when we talk about significance, like yeah, that was a very significant moment in my life, a very defining moment, and dictated a lot of the relationships I had going forward, especially with women.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, hindsight's always 2020. So looking back on it, you're like, oh wow, I see how this played out. I see how that played out. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that too, because that's some real shit. And I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a ton of people out there that can resonate with that. And then as far as my third one, right? My third canon event, I feel like it's the first time being on my own, truly, own rent, own bills, everything. And then here's an interesting perspective too, like the first time my life has been calm. And what I mean by that is, when I was growing up anyway, there was a lot of chaos, a lot of chaotic situations. And, as a person, you almost get so used to the high pressure situations like, oh, okay, is this life or death? Or, oh, we're dealing with some crazy family shit. Or, oh, this toxic relationship I'm dealing with. Like when you reach a point in your life when you don't have to deal with that, it comes with a certain calmness and a certain peace. But like that's where I'm at right now. Like I just got my own place, officially, like no strings attached, nothing very recently. And it's just crazy looking back on it because like I'm not even used to this calmness or peaceness. So it's kind of, I don't want to say turmoil within myself, but almost navigation on how I can personally manage this in the healthiest way, right? Because there's certain times like right now where I'm like, fuck, man, like I want to do something. Like we were talking about earlier, like whether it's going out, seeing a friend, like just doing something, anything to entertain myself. But I realize like that's because you're so used to the chaos, like something always going on, something always like taking place where it's grabbing your attention. Now, it wasn't always bad, but more often than not, especially with all the trauma and shit, usually chaos has contributed to something negative going on. So you talk about psychological shit, it's more of a mental psychological shift in terms of being able to manage that and being grateful too that my life is now calm and peaceful and I got my own space to manage everything. But it's not so black and white as to, what's the best way to deal with this. So I feel like, in terms of canon events, significant changes in my life, like that's where I'm at currently. So it's a rebuilding phase.
Mhm.
But I feel like that's not talked about enough either, too.
Yeah. Well, what I will say is, listening to you say that is, you are operating out of a place of, what they call like survival mode. So, constant pressure, constant chaos, all those type of factors where, you're just reacting. You're in reactionary survival mode. So
Right.
you don't have the time. So now that things are different for you, you have a time to be able to be calm and be in your peaceful mode and enjoy that, you know. And then you were talking about, constantly having to, need to do something or be with somebody or see something because we talked about this earlier also. It's, we constantly, especially nowadays in the world with, you got a computer basically in your hand, in your phone
Oh yeah.
and the TV, and you have constantly all these distractions, and what they are, it's just like that's your dopamine rush. That's hey, I'm feeling bored, I'm feeling down. Let me pick up my phone. Let me call somebody. Let me go do
Yep.
something. Let me go to the bar. Let me go hang out with this person. Let me go hang out with this girl, or whatever it is. It's like because that feeds you and gives you that dopamine rush, that feeling of satisfaction. And, I mean, that's normal because we've kind of been, programmed that way. But it's also, like you said, it's nice to have that, peaceful, moment where you don't need all that. You don't have to pick up your phone, excuse me. You don't have to, go to a bar and have a drink. You don't have to, be with a female just to get, some sexual pleasure or physical pleasure, whatever it may be. Um, you can just kind of be in your peace and be in a different era of your life where you can enjoy that. And as we talked again earlier, it's hard for me as well. And I'm much older than you, where I work all week, and then it's like on the weekends, like I want some type of excitement and I want to do something. I'm constantly telling Angela, like, hey, I don't want to lay around this weekend. I want to do that. But then I also, and you do need that. You do need things to be fresh in a relationship. You do want to have things to look forward to. But at the same time, it's like a give and take where you also do need the reset time and the relaxation time and
Of
that
course.
time for the mental clarity. So, it's a fine line. You have to just find out what works for you. But I see it within myself, like when like I have downtime and especially on the weekends because I work all week. It's like I'll kind of if I'm kind of stagnant for too long, like just relaxing, resting, I start to feel like a depression. And I think it's just the way we've been programmed that you constantly need like new input and like that dopamine just to like feed you. It's literally like a drug that you constantly need like some form of excitement or entertainment to keep you going. But also at the same time, because we're programmed like that, you really don't. It's just that that's what we're programmed to think. So, that quiet and that calm is very important. And you're starting to realize that because it's your first time. So, that's valuable. But I will say that you still need to go deep stuff for yourself. Have that
I'm not opposed.
pleasurable things. It can't be all work, no play. But, it's a fine line again. You have to find out what works for you
Yeah,
and
it's
have
a
a balance.
constant balance. No, and
Yeah.
I'm realizing that slowly but surely. I mean, like you told me before, I think I'm ahead of the game, which is good. But things could always be worse. Things could always be better, right? I'm just trying to take it
Absolutely.
slow. Build the right way,
Yeah.
internally and externally, and not rush shit. Because what's for me is going to be meant for me. Like if I'm fighting this hard for shit, fighting this hard for a career, climb the corporate ladder, fighting this hard for a relationship, fighting this hard for just certain things I want in my life. Well, it's probably not meant for me because God has a
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're constantly fighting, it's probably not. We have to fight, but it should come. There should be it shouldn't be so hard.
Right.
It
There should be some
should
form of
have to
alignment
work.
where it's like, okay, like we're
Yeah.
matching up now. Like we're on the same frequency.
Yeah. You should have to work for it, but it should also feel right. It shouldn't feel like all constant like work and aggravation and
Right. Like I'm in
stress
the
and
fight of my
hoping.
life and
Yeah,
fucking, one wrong move, like it all falls apart.
because anything, anything you gain, if you work hard, like anything you gain, that's worth having, you have to work hard for.
Of course.
But it shouldn't be just constant uphill battle. There
Right.
should be kind of a plateau where, things kind of take their natural, course and, it gets a little bit easier. It shouldn't be all uphill. But, again, like you said, it's all about balance. That's what it comes down to, just finding out what works for you, having kind of understanding yourself too. Everybody's going to be different. What works for you is not going to work for me and vice versa. So kind of finding out, what works for you.
Oh yeah. So for anybody that's watching right now, a lot of heavy topics, a lot of good topics, but we're gonna keep shit a little bit lighter with story time with Pops. This whole episode has been story time, but we're gonna keep it a little lighter because I know Pops has a story he wanted to share with us. So you got the floor,
Well,
Pops.
my stories are kind of crazy. They're, my days of, being in the streets, getting high and stuff like that. So just like last week when I talked about, the boosting at the stores and things of that nature. So one of my other hustles was, and again, this is not justifying anything. This is a disclaimer, not justifying anything or telling
Of course
anybody
not.
to do this. This is just my former life. So anyway, one of my other hustles was I sold drugs for years. I sold pills. And, people kind of knew me for that. So even when I started to go into a decline and kind of lost my pill business and, kind of lost my contacts and, really got deeper into the addiction, um, people still knew me for, the pills and things like that. So I would hit people up and, be like, oh, I got some pills. And they kind of, it went hand in hand. They're like, oh, he always has them. So, they would kind of believe it. So anyway, I'm living in the county. I'm not living in Philly. I'm living in the county with my ex. And I talked to this kid I haven't talked to in years. Anyway, we got to talking. And he was like, yeah, I need some perks and whatever, whatever. I was like, yeah, I got 'em. My man got them. I'm grabbing for you. And there was no perks. Like let's start with that. There was no perks. So
Right.
I made him believe that there was no perks. He drove from Philly down to the county, half hour, 40 minutes. And he gets there. And my whole point is to get him there. I can't tell him like, oh, I gotta get him from somebody. I acted like I had him. So he gets there and whatever deal we worked out, numbers wise, it was like $900. So he gets there, he's got the money. I'm in his car, and he's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Yeah, I gotta go grab him." He's like, "Oh, I thought you had him," and I'm like, "No, we're," and I have him pull up, and this is the funny part. I have him pull up in front of my old apartment where I used to live, and the reason I do that because you know I'm an addict. Like I just want to get money and get high, and I don't want to have to like I could just and this dude, to be honest, I could take his money. But when you're
Right.
like
Just
worried
feed him
about
for his bread.
yeah, when you're like worried about getting high and stuff, the last thing you want to do is fight. And I could have just took his money, but then it's a whole thing, and I don't want to go through that whole confrontation. I'm just focused on getting his money, going to get high, and that's the end of it. So I have him pull up in front of my old apartment. Reason being is because he sees the door. I have him parked right in front of it. Now I don't live there anymore. And the apartment, when you go up the steps, it's a top floor. So when you go up, you open the door, you go up the steps. There's an apartment on the left, apartment on the right, and a window right between. Maybe you could see the setup. So I'm telling him, like, he's like, oh, I'm not really comfortable with you going in there. I'm like, bro, the door's right there. You're right in front of it. I got to come back out. So he's like, all right. So he gives me the 900 or whatever. So, like I said, you could probably see the setup. I don't live there anymore. I'm not going to go in the apartments, obviously. And as I said, there's apartment on the left, apartment on the right, window in the middle.
Right. So you're
So I
probably in the
mean,
stairwell just plotting.
no, I go up the step. He gives me the money. I go up the
Right.
steps. The window in the middle, if you remember, I slide the window open and I hang jump from the second
Oh
that
my
second
God,
story.
bro.
I hang jump from the second story window just to get this dude's 900. So, needless to say, as I'm hobbling, because I turned my ankle, I'm hang jumping from, 20 feet. Um, I go down, twist my ankle, of course, because, it's kind of hard to land perfectly like a gymnast when you're hang jumping out a window from 20 feet. So as I'm hang jumping out the window and hobbling, away, he's parked and the train is like a block and a half away. So now I circle around, the back of the building because the window takes you to the back. And I circle around, I take this long way, and I can still see his car as I'm standing at the train station. He's calling me, he's texting me like, "Bro, you coming down?" And I'm at the train station waiting to go to Philly to grab dope. So, not the funniest story like last week, but it just shows you the insanity that you will do rather than just take this dude's money or whatever. And like I said, it was somebody that I could have physically overpowered, but the the insanity of drugs is that you're looking to do it the easiest way, and clearly in my mind I thought that jumping out of a second story window was easier
What's the
than
better
just taking
option?
his it was the better option than taking his money. So like I said, next thing I know, I'm in Kensington, I'm copping dope, an hour later, with his money, with a twisted ankle and, limping the whole time. But, the insanity that I used to live is unbelievable. And again, not the funniest story, but it just shows you, the way that you live when you're, living in that lifestyle. But anyway, just another little installment of the tales of my former past.
Yeah,
And
look, I mean, look,
what to
everyone here
avoid.
is sober now, which is great. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's the chaos that I'm talking about. Even
yeah,
earlier, like you're just so used to that, and it's like, what the fuck, man? When your life gets
yeah,
peaceful, when it changes for the better, you're like, damn, like how do I go from all that to now it's like not boring, but it's just less shit going on, right? Like I'm in a
yeah.
better
But
position.
honestly, like I used to, every day was like that. Like even maybe not that, but every day was like some crazy thing that
Yeah, it's
happened.
like a
And
fucking
like
adventure.
now, yeah, now, to just like have a mundane, boring life is actually a great thing. I don't have to worry about going to jail. I don't have to worry about my next high. I don't have to worry about how I'm going to get money, have a
Yeah,
good
you're not
job.
looking over your
I
shoulder.
don't, there's just none of that. There's none of that stress. I drive by a cop, there's a lot of times, I mean, I've had a car for most of my life. There's a lot of times I didn't have a car. Like I said, I'm taking the train, I'm on
Right.
foot
Bus,
because
whatever.
I done fucked everything up. I can't even keep a job or a stable place to live, let alone have a car. And now it's like all those things are not the case. And, I'll drive by a cop. And before I would get like so paranoid and like, oh, what the fuck? I don't have a license. This, I got drugs on me. I got this. And, now it's like, I wish you would pull me over, just so I could prove you wrong,
Yeah, right.
And it's a great feeling to not have to worry about shit like that. Just basic shit that I took for granted for a long time. It's a great feeling. So, and again, we talked about it. Like my life might be, kind of boring sometimes and very mundane and routine, but it's a good thing. With that comes peace, as you were talking about, and a lot of less stress, and the other benefits. Like saving money, making money. It's just like so many benefits, but it's kind of like surreal when I look back that I could be the person I am now after, the shit that I've been through. So yeah, it's wild.
No, I love that. I mean, had a good moral at the end, and that's what we're all
Yeah,
about here. But
yeah,
hey, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Just puts
yeah.
everything in perspective.
And I feel like I should change my last one since we're on this topic, or say my last one.
Shoot.
You got, did you go through your three?
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, we never got to my third one, and I talked about my mom and dad getting divorced. I talked about the thing with the girl taking advantage of me and stuff like that. But the third one, I think it's kind of obvious and kind of relates to what we were just talking about. I just finally got to a point in my life where I kept going in and out of jail, kept relapsing with the drugs, and ended up, in the same situation, wound up at the very end, homeless in Kensington. And I'm just like, what is going on? And it just came down to at the very end, I couldn't even get high anymore. I would go and do whatever I did to get money, get my drugs, and go and get high. And it was like the high wasn't even satisfying anymore. Like I was going through this whole internal battle, like this moral, internal
Dilemma.
moral
Yeah.
compass type thing where I'd be getting high and I'd literally start crying, like literally. And, I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like I can't even get high anymore. It was because like this whole, moral thing and,
Your
your
conscience.
niece, yeah, my conscience was just eating at me. And at that time, your niece, my granddaughter, was just born. And, I was thinking about her. I was just thinking about you and your brother, and just like everything. And just like, what the fuck am I doing? And it was just eating at me to where I couldn't even get high anymore. And I finally just made the decision. I was like, something's got to give. And I went to rehab and just started really just doing some personal inventory. Like, you know, I always blamed, I've talked about this in other episodes, always blamed everybody else for my situation. My mom and dad not being together. I blamed dad for not being there, mom for doing this and that, my stepdad for shit I went through with him. I blamed this person, that person. It was always me putting it on other people. And at that moment, I just got to the point like, you know what? It's me. Like, no matter, regardless of what they did or didn't do, it came down to me. And like, I'm an adult. Like, now I'm in my mid 40s at this point. And it's like, you can sit here and feel sorry for yourself and complain, poor you, your rest of your life, or you can take some personal inventory and accountability and start to take the steps to change that. Because regardless of what they did, it's in the past. And the past is the past. Like, even if they want to change what they did or didn't do, they can't. So it's about, the now, taking the accountability and what steps am I going to take to go forward and change that. And that was just like a very defining moment in my life. And then once I got sober, started working on myself and like really working on myself, doing therapy, started journaling, like really tapping into the core reasons of, the issues I had. Then I wound up, embracing Islam because I had been, researching it when I was in jail and everything. And, most people that, convert or revert, whatever word term you want to use, they do it when they're in jail. I had researched in jail and had a cellie that kind of schooled me on a lot of things. But I did it outside because I was doing so much internal work on myself and so much soul searching
Yeah, fucking
that
right.
it was like a calling where he was calling me and I just, did more research than was around people who were giving me the right information and, finally embracing that, taking my Shahada. um, everything kind of finally came together. It was like the core elements because I had, went through the recovery thing and relapsed a bunch of times, but finally all the pieces came together and fit like the right puzzle. And ever since then, man, it's, things have been much better. Like you said earlier, are they great? Am I ever, my where I exactly want to be? No, we're always striving for better. But finally, life is good, and as we talked about, I don't have to worry about silly shit. Like I did before. I don't have
Yeah.
to look
You
over
don't
my
gotta worry about
shoulder.
getting jammed up.
Yeah, I don't have to look over my shoulder. I don't have to worry about the law. I've been out of the legal system for over 2 years. I have a great job. I have a great relationship. I have peace of mind. I have my faith. So, things could always be better, but things are great compared to what they used to be. And that key moment that we were talking about, the whole topic was when I finally just was having that dilemma within myself and was like, you know what? Something's got to change. Like I'm the common denominator in all this pain, and I got to work on myself. And that was just, like I said, that was my third defining moment, that really changed things for me and has propelled me to where I am now.
Yeah, significant moment. Another canon event. I mean, and you see a lot of this shit online too, but to have just real conversations like this, I guarantee there's going to be so many people that benefit from us, just listening to
Hey
us.
man,
And
that's
again,
the
these are
goal.
just stories.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, if I can help somebody else, that's what it's all about. Because I remember, people helped me and people reached out to me. And when I thought it was hopeless and everything they told me, I was like, yeah, there ain't no way. And as they're telling me everything, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I'm different. Like it's not gonna work for me. But it did. So now it's my duty to give back to the next person, whether it be through social media or it be in person, you know, whatever it is, that's our duty as, addicts and not even addicts, just people. We're supposed to help each other. So we're supposed to give our experience and lend that to the next person to help them, elevate it.
Of course, the
As
world
it
needs
comes
more of
down
that
to it.
right now. So we're just going to keep that good energy
Absolutely.
flowing. All right, y'all. It's going to wrap it up for episode 6. We appreciate you guys tuning in. And real quick, I just wanted to give a little shout out to RDS. That's Recovery Done Simple. We're officially partnered with them where we're going to support them. They're out in the streets trying to help people recover from addiction, things of that nature, all positive energy. And we're officially partnered with them now. So you can check them out. There's going to be a link at the bottom of this description and video. And you guys can check out their page as well. And just a heads up, we got some apparel and t-shirts coming out relatively soon. When we do eventually drop them, a portion of the profits is going to go to RDS, helping people recover, level up, get their mindset right, and eventually just elevate themselves. So, again, appreciate y'all tuning in, and we will see y'all next time. Pops, appreciate y'all.
All right, kid. Peace. All right,
All right.
y'all. Peace.